bottom, can you see? You might want to.
Yes.
Dave.
I wonder if we should get the mouse. So we can turn it off.
Budgets.
Who's this? Hello?
There are a couple individuals passing out packets, which we should have had on the table but didn't get out. There are packets that have an agenda, packets that have, let's see, there's an agenda, there's a budget information and minutes for the last year. So I think we ought to be ready. Let's get the packets passed out and then we will begin. There's some more right over here. Okay. A couple more people need packets back there. One back behind, a few more there.
Sorry, I don't feel well.
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised. So
Displayed.
we can have the agenda slide, please, Martin.
What was that? Your name is not displayed?
This is just a summary of what you have in front of you, of what we're going to do today. Incidentally, I have a device here. I asked if we had a laser pointer, and apparently we do not, but I brought one. This is not a weapon. This is not a weapon. It has the advantage of being a laser pointer and also telling me what the temperature of the screen is. So I can make sure that the temperatures does not rise too high in this meeting. There is one correction I want to make on the agendas, which is passed out to you, and that is that in item 10, which is scheduled for presentation of renovation options and vote, the correct dates are June 2nd and June 9th. So not May 29th and June 2nd, but rather June 2nd and June 9th. You'll hear a lot more about that, but I just want to point out that the written agenda, and it's my fault, that the dates were put down wrong. You'll hear more about that as we go. So let me call the meeting
It
to
said
order.
your name is
The
spelling
folks who
that
are conducting the meeting are in the process of counting, and they will soon
And
tell
mine
us
was,
whether we have a quorum. I think
Weird,
we
ours
can
did.
have a couple, go ahead with a couple items before we have our votes and so forth. So I want to welcome all of you. I am very proud to be your president, and I'm so proud of the
Yeah,
folks
they only
who
have one name on there.
you have voted as leaders. They do a terrific job, and I'm really pleased to represent you as this congregation. Thank you. I spoke with Patty last night, and as you know, let's see, where is Suki's sign saying, I'm Reverend Patty? Yes, I'm Reverend Patty. Please ignore the beard. And actually, I think it would be appropriate to light our chalice at this point. And here are words that, and Fred has agreed to do this again. He is very experienced at this. We gave a practice run this morning to make sure that he was able to do this correctly. So Patty says the following: I wish that I could be here in person to say what a good year this has been. We have followed through with our hope to spiff up the surroundings, and it clearly looks a lot more spiffy, a lot better than it did. And I'm sure that you noticed that as of 2 days ago, or a day or two yesterday, we now have our parking lot improved. And the successful stewardship program has topped it off, and you'll be hearing more about that. We are now able to move into another year fully funded. This is a year of change with my leaving, and I have sensed a new energy from the leadership as they search for the right interim minister. More on that later. Today, let us look around at the people in the room and remember in this moment the ways that they have stepped up, offered solace, laughter, and hope. May our minds and hearts be open to the business of this meeting. May we be gentle with each other, and may we feel the presence of Granite Mountain, which it now dresses the back of our sanctuary. Now, in the back, so let us call to be fully present in this gathering. In the words of Reverend Kristen Green, may our values shine through our decisions, and our strivings be made clear through our discussions. May our lives speak of a shared future where we transform the world through acts of love and justice. So those are words from Reverend Patty. Yes. Fantastic. We needed a quorum of 25% for this meeting. We have a quorum of 50, so we can officially open the meeting. We always have a parliamentarian who's responsible for keeping me and everybody else in order, and Joe Sprague has offered to serve in that function. And Joe, are you here? Right here. Okay. So Joe will speak up if she needs to keep us on track. The first order of business is approval of the minutes from the May meeting. These were sent out late this last week. They are in your agenda. I will give you 30 seconds or 45 seconds to take a look at them. It has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the question. Please raise your cards if you vote yes. And let's see, who is taking the count? I'm sorry, I guess we don't have, do we need to count? It is clearly passed, I think. We needed 51%. Looks like we had 80 or 90% to me. Okay. The next order of business is election of new officers and committee members. We have basically two separate elections. One is for the board, and let me summarize here. You will be voting for board secretary Don Correa. Don, you are here, I know. Don is over here. Don was appointed to the board as a substitute during this last session and has been participating as a board member and is taking over from Bobby Bollinger. And incidentally, Bobby Bollinger is taking Bobby Bollinger's slot. And I want to personally, on the part of the congregation, thank Bobby for her long service on the board. I think it's been 3 sessions. And she has done just a wonderful job. And I know that Bobby, although she's leaving the board, we're going to be calling her frequently and asking her what we're supposed to be doing to keep us on track. So I want to thank her very, very much. So Dawn is would be elected for a 2-year term and would be serving as secretary. We have a new board member who is proposed, Dick Walter. Dick, you're here. I saw you here earlier. He's back here. Played a very, I'm sorry? Would you care to come up front? That would be good. And Dick has served a great deal on the facilities committee and is continuing to work in that regard, and actually is working with Dan Reardon on our front door out there. And finally, Barbara Wilson, who has served 2 years, is up for a second term, and according to the board, according to the bylaws, people can run for 3 successive terms, so she is qualified to continue, and she has been very important in our board activities. So I call for oh, I'm sorry? Oh, yes, not to forget Tracy, a key member of our board. So these are our these have been proposed by the nominating committee. Incidentally, I had asked Elaine to present this slate of candidates. Elaine has what did you call it, the GRUD? The ick, and she called me this morning to ask me to present. So I am presenting as to represent the nominating committee. Yes, ma'am.
I think we do need to take a moment to also thank our outgoing treasurer, Russ Erickson, who, how many terms, Russ?
Daylight has come and he wants to go home. So, representing the nominating committee, I move that this slate of officers be approved. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded that this slate of candidates be approved for the board. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir. Just to clarify, are these all 2-year terms? Yes. Yes. If hearing no other discussion, I call for a vote to approve the slate of candidates. I don't think we need to count. We need a 51%. I see many, many, many cards held up. Okay. Thank you. Our second election of officers has to do with the endowment committee. It turns out that there are actually 2 slots available, I'm told by Art, who heads the endowment committee. The only one has been identified, and Art asks me to call for any nominations for that position. If there are any additional nominations, we can at least consider that. Obviously, a nominee would have to agree to serve. If there, I will give 15 seconds for contemplation. If there are no addition, okay. Okay. One, okay. One additional, okay. Fred Craps has been nominated from the floor to be included as in the slate of committee members for the endowment committee. Is there a second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Do you accept? You do. Okay. Yes, sir. Are you?
Hopefully I'll still be alive.
Okay. Okay, we have, is there any, hearing no objection. Any objection? Hearing no objection, I move that these 2 individuals, Sarah Mahler, and incidentally, Sarah, you are here. Sarah, would you like to stand up? Sure.
You already seen it.
Yeah, right, right.
Hey, Fred. I didn't know about the 3-year commitment.
But you're still willing.
Now that Fred's with me, it's okay.
Okay, okay. So it has been moved and seconded to accept this slate of candidates for the endowment committee. All in favor? I don't think there's any doubt that we have a 51%. This sounds like a possible takeover, you know. Okay, next order of business, we're already down to number 8, approval of fiscal year 24-25 annual budget. Tracy, wait a minute. Number 7, endowment committee report. Yes, sir.
Everything's on the screen. All right. We did have a presentation in February this year, and the results of that is 2 new members of the Girly Society, yay, who have promised to put Granite Peak in their estate plans. As of the end of March, which is the last numbers I can get, the general endowment fund balance was $267,000 and change. Continues to march up. When it gets to $300,000, that's the magic number where we can start taking income out of the endowment fund. All of the, we actually have 3 accounts with the UU Common Endowment Fund, the General Endowment, Ethan Davis Leadership Fund, and the Social Justice Fund. They're all invested in the same way. And the annual return, according to the UUCEF website, as of the end of February, was 12.1%. So are there any questions that weren't answered at the February meeting you were supposed to come to? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for helping me keep in order here. Okay. Now, we have a presentation from Tracy to discuss the budget. You have 2 sheets, I think, or maybe 3, in your packet concerning the budget.
Hello. Martin, you got it. Thank you. First, as you probably have surmised by my periodic coughing, I do have the crud that has been spoken about. That's why I'm far away. I've been wearing my mask, and I'm not sharing Rick's mic, so he does not get sick. So hopefully I won't have a coughing fit in the middle of this, but I may, so bear with me. You can take the next slide, Martin. Everybody has a two-sided sheet. We condensed the budget to make it hopefully as easy as possible. I do realize it's a little small, but this way we saved some paper. So it's 2 pages, front and back. And you should see, you might as well take a look at it, have it in front of you, because I'm not putting it up on the slide because there's obviously a lot of lines. So the first page is our income revenue section, and then it goes into the expenses section, and then flip it over and keep going to the end when you'll see the expenses total. So I'll get to that, but I just want to make sure you know what you have here. A couple of other things before I get to highlights. This is a new report for all of you. It is not what you're used to seeing, the report that Russ used to do. So the first thing is, why is that? For those who don't know, we used to be in a different financial system known as Power Church. Many of you have spent many hours in that. Fred, you're nodding there, Fred Ford. We moved to QuickBooks Online. Some people are familiar with QuickBooks. So this started July 1, 2023 was our full budget this year, the 23-24 budget, was in QuickBooks. However, the budget was created before QuickBooks, so it was created in Power Church. Why is that important? You're going to see some differences in the columns on this report, so I wanted to explain that. So if you look, this is now the QuickBooks Online report. The good news is all our reports will be in QuickBooks for the full year this coming year, so that'll be a lot easier for our budgets, etc. If you look at the report, you see 2 columns. I want to make sure in the middle that you know. Fiscal year 23-24. Not everybody knows this, I learned as I did my office hours. Our fiscal year, our year for our congregation, is July 1 to June 30. That's our year. So 23-24, our year ends on June 30 of this year. Our new fiscal year starts July 1st, so the 24-25 column is what you see for that budget year, okay? So on the left is the income, revenue, and expense codes. All our accounts, all our names of accounts. And then a new column, which I added with Russ's help, is this last column, additional details and explanations of accounts. You used to use footnotes and have to go up and down to find it. We put it right next to the column, so that'll be a little easier, and we added more explanations. I'm not going to go through the budget because I think the explanations are pretty clear. What I'd love for you to do at any time is take a look at it. If you have any questions about what the accounts are, look at the comments on the right. If you still have questions, email me. Don't hesitate. I did a couple of office hours this past week for those who were interested, and I did a session this morning. Only a few people signed up, which was fine, but anytime you have questions, I'm happy to walk you through it whenever you need that. Okay, so now on to the highlights. The first thing is very great news. We have a balanced budget in the first round. Yay. If you remember last year, we had to go back and cut some expenses and ask for more pledges. We did not have to do that this year. With the help of the Finance Committee and the board, we made some changes so that we could get to a balanced budget in advance. So that was great news. I already talked about the full fiscal year being in QuickBooks, and I'll explain when we get to it why that's a little different from last year to this year. And then the third piece, which really is thanks to all of you, we reached our pledge goal. It was attained, again, in the first round. So we need to thank Marianne Erickson, who I don't see. Where are you, Mary? Oh, because she's doing the Zoom. So Marianne hears us, though. But Marianne and the whole stewardship committee, and of course all of you for your pledges, so that we could reach this balanced budget. Next slide, please. Okay, so now people ask, well, balanced budget, what the heck does that mean? How do we do it? So take a look at the report. What in our bylaws, which I learned as the new treasurer, we have in our bylaws that our income, total income, what must match our total expenses. That's the balanced budget. How do we get to that? I started with the expenses. If you want to look at your second page, but then flip it over, so it's really the last page of your packet. Go to the last page and you will see the total expenses on the bottom. Our total expenses for the 24-25 budget year is $337,370. And how do we get that? We look at last year. We look at our actual expenses from the previous budget and how we ended up. And then we look at what we budgeted last year. And then we look at the actual expenses to date. And we extrapolate out for the rest of the year and anticipate what next year's budget should look like. Now, I know there's going to be a question. I hope somebody is looking at this and saying, wait a minute. We went from $273,000 to $337,000? What are we doing? That's a big increase. So I want to make sure you see, and this is what I meant when I said we switched from Power Church to QuickBooks. Those of you who know that we are a 501c3, not-for-profit, will be very happy to know that in this new system, we are now really accounting for everything. Money coming in and money coming out. Our accountant is checking it. Jack Wood is helping us check it. We want to make sure that we are operating in the right way and showing when we get a donation, even if it's emergency assistance for somebody to get a car, we want to report that, and then we want to show for all of the accounts. Why is that important? It's because $45,801 in expenses were not previously budgeted in last year's budget. So if you look at the 23-24 column, you will see some blanks, and you can see actually right on this last page, the whole program charity expense section. Charitable organizational contributions, our SOS checks, our link checks, our minister benevolence donations, our emergency assistance donations. And then the biggest one that we didn't budget for was empty bowls. These were not in the budget. Those total $45,801. The point that I want to make, reason that's important is if you take the $45,801 out of the $337, you will see that we are only increasing our expenses by $17,601. Okay? So that's the biggest thing you probably want to know as it equates to what the difference is. And what you should also know is of the $45,000, $30,000 is empty bowls. We've budgeted for this year a goal of $30,000 because we know what we did last year, plus we're going to do business sponsors. Now, the other thing is we do $30,000 in income. So you'll see $30,000 in the income section of empty bowls. But you will also see 30,000 in expenses because we are going to be paying those checks to the food banks. So this is a wash, but it's important. Jack would tell you, it's important to record it, even if it is income coming in the same number as expenses going out. Okay? So that's the big change in terms of those numbers. Now, I want to talk about pledges. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Can you go back one? I should have said something I think is pretty obvious. A balanced budget means that look at the total expenses and now look at the total income line. They're exactly the same. That's how you know we have a balanced budget. But how do we get there? And this is the last piece, is the next slide. How do we get there? I just am showing you the income section. If you want to, instead of looking at the slide, look at the first page of your budget report. To the top half of the sheet, that's your income sheet. Well, what we do is we figure out in our budget how much expenses we need. We needed 337,000 and change, right? How do we then figure out the income part? We first take all of the income lines except for pledges. We do the pledges last. So you will notice plate, which is our donations. That includes SOS, music fundraisers, Lovejoy dinner income, rummage sale. All of those have budget lines. If you see on the total income line, you will see that $83,927 comes from income outside of pledges. So of course, what do? If we need 337,000 in expenses, we subtract 83,927, and now we know what our pledges are needed. And so that's how we were able to come to you and say we needed $253,443 in pledges for this next year. By the way, if somebody is trying to check the difference between last year's pledges and this year, it's 16,000 and some odd because we actually increased our income a little bit. So you remember that 17,000 difference? Some of it is extra income, not pledges. So we actually asked less in pledges as an increase than we needed as an increase for this year's operating budget. So that's how we do the pledges, which is on the very top line, the $253,443 in pledges, which, as you know, we received. And so that's the big thank you to all of you, and that's how we got to our balanced budget. Next slide. Questions. Hey, I think that was pretty good for a whole budget overview. So I did that as condensed as possible. So now, any questions on what I just said or on the report as you were looking through it? And Russ is going to come around if there are questions. Russ, you want to pass it? I think Jack has a question. Yes. Thanks, Jack. The hand mic? Oh, did you press the button, Russ? Is it green, the little light? All right, try again. What number, Jack, is that say, the number? It says number 1, Martin, if that helps. Is it dead? This is on next year's budget. Replace our mics and batteries. I would do this, but I don't want to do that. Yeah, I'll repeat the question and go ahead. Ah, yes. Great question. What would the impact? Very good question. So Jack is asking because of Patty's leaving, and some of you know that, well, one, there will be some ripples with Patty leaving. One of them is that Patty currently is the coordinator of social justice. And in the past, we've had a social justice coordinator. That position was not budgeted because Patty was doing it. So Jack is asking me to explain what impact might that have for the budget, which is a great question. So first, thanks to Barb Wilson's diligent efforts and help on the interim contract, first addressing Patty's, what we have done, we already have very good guidelines from the UUA about what we would be offering a potential interim minister. Of course, we don't know the exact details, but we have, with the guidelines that they have said, with the benefits that we need to provide, and knowing that it would be 11 months of the year, even including relo, we are pretty in the ballpark with what Patty is making in compensation. Obviously, we don't know to the dollar, but we feel pretty confident we're good there. However, the second question, we do not have in the budget a position for a social justice coordinator. In the past, that has been around $15,000. That is currently not budgeted. If we decide that we need to hire someone, which is probably likely unless we get a volunteer from the congregation who steps forward, then the finance committee has already said that they are going to help me. We're going to look at the budget. We're going to look at our other funds, like our unanticipated needs funds that the congregation has, and we're going to try to figure out a way to support hiring a social justice coordinator. So it's already on the finance committee's radar, but it is great that you all know that it is something we really want to try to do. We've got Kelsey, and then Annette, and then Norma. And I'll repeat we got the mic working.
All right. I have a couple of questions. Hello?
It's a bit of an echo.
I'm an echo. If it keeps echoing, I won't.
There you go.
Okay. One of the things that, and I don't remember the name of it, but last year when we had that $100,000 and then it got split between 3 different money buckets, I think I saw in the bucket that there was some discussion with social justice of using that money to support the farmers market program. Could that money be used for hiring a person, that $10,000?
Okay.
That's just one
question.
thought.
Okay, so one for the Zoomers, in case it's because a little fuzzy that you didn't hear that. The question was, those who remember $100,000 called the Brownlee funds were donated last year, and the decision was to divide that into 3. 33,000 went to the social justice ministry work. And the question was, could some of those funds be used for a staff position? I do not know if there is something in the bylaws, so that would be the first thing we would check, that says it cannot be used for staff. That would be one question. The second one is, the process is that the social justice team determines a proposal of what they want to do with those funds. They come to the board, and the board would approve a proposal. So if the social justice team felt that was what they wanted to do, and it was allowed in the bylaws, they would come to the board, and the board would decide whether to approve that. So it's a possibility, but I don't know. We'd have to check the bylaws.
So my second question related to Reverend Patty is the music budget. So I don't want to make this assumption. I haven't seen that Mary Lou has resigned. But assuming that Mary Lou is also moving to Tucson, then we also have the music budget that we're going to have to bring somebody else into that. Has there been consideration as to whether that budget would be the same or less?
Yes, so the question is about the music director. So the first thing is Mary Lou has not yet resigned. So up until now, obviously, we go with the, she is still here. If she does resign and also leaves, then we would have a budget. We have Mary Lou's position. And you, thank you for reminding me. I do want to make a very positive point about compensation. So that's part of this. But we have a nice budget in place for Mary Lou's position, as well as a pretty strong budget for special music, outside musicians coming in, for the purchase of sheet music, for the support of paying our accompanist. So I would feel pretty confident that we'd be okay with our budget, especially also that we probably wouldn't get someone right at August 1st. So we would probably have a little bit of a lag, so we might even have a cushion. But I do want to speak about compensation, because this was a very important issue to the congregation last year and to the finance committee. This year, with the help of Russ and the finance committee, we looked at the UUA guidelines for every staff position, and we were not up to par in every area. So you will notice, if you look at your budget, in the compensation of each ministry, music, faith development, administration, you will see some nice increases there. And that reflects, we can now say that for every one of those positions, we are within the UUA guidelines for compensation. So that would include Mary Lou or whoever takes her place as music director. I think it was Annette, then Norma, and then Art. I'm just going in order of who raised their hands, and until we get cut off by Rick. Go ahead, Annette.
So my question also related to the music position and the music expenses. I feel like there's a chance, if Mary Lou leaves, that there will be a fairly major change in the way the music department will be run because of having a person with totally different experience than Mary Lou, including things like some of the expenses were related to the special kinds of concerts that you folks put on, et cetera, as a result of us having a wonderful opportunity to have Mary Lou here with us. I guess really it's not a question, because it's more of a question of procedure. It feels to me that the loss of both of these people may potentially have a huge change in the budget that the board will need to work with. Is that just a part of the procedure that the board does in any instance of, if it looks like the budget's going to go very ski-waddled as once both Patty and Mary Lou leaves, then do we have a whole different budget proposed at that point, or how does it happen?
Okay, that's a good question. So first, you have yes, I'll repeat the question in case you couldn't hear from that mic. The question is not just, it sounds like, well, we already talked a little bit about the minister, but also with the music director, and the change of these positions could have the potential to really change or shift the budget. If it does, what is the procedure or the process? So the first thing is, as I try to explain, we have a good budget in place with two pretty senior people in Mary Lou Prince and in Patty's positions. So we feel like we're in pretty good shape on the budget for those areas in terms of compensation. In special music, we actually have quite a bit budgeted for outside musicians and music fundraisers. And again, I'm talking a little bit hypothetically here. I could anticipate that we would maybe use less of that, not more of that, because we might not have Mary Lou's connections, et cetera. Although there are a lot of musical people in this congregation with contacts, so we do hope to bring in outside musicians. But I don't anticipate that being a challenge. However, let's just say, to answer Annette's question, that it was an issue. What we always do with the budget is we get reports at the end of every month that is with the finance committee that we all look at, and we see where we're over and where we're under, line by line. And we are mindful of trying to keep to that budget. So we often can get it from some other places in the budget. That's one way. We could do another fundraiser if we need to, if we feel like we're really in any position. If there's any changes, we don't start over with a new budget. So that does not happen where we create a new budget. We use the budget that we have, and then we try to adjust, coordinate. And if there were ever any issues with the budget, it would be the work of the finance committee and the board to work out how to resolve it. But we don't anticipate that at this point in time. Yes, I think she has a follow-up, Russ. Okay, so what Annette is saying is we might have more money. That happens all the time, frankly, that there are some areas where we have an excess. But as I see Lydia nodding her head, that unfortunately, I can assure you, there will always be an area that needs those funds. So, for example, we just talked about social justice coordinator is not budgeted. So if we have an excess in one place, we could use it in another. So if at the end, maybe this is another part of your question, at the end of the year, if we have a surplus, that goes into our unanticipated needs funds. So we then can use that for other things. But we're getting better and better, wouldn't you say, Russ? We're at budgeting pretty close to those numbers that we're not talking a lot of dollars there. Okay, the next one was Art. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Oh, Norma, we skipped you. Norma.
Question is, Patty is going away, so we're going to have an interim minister for 1 year. My question is who is paying for her travel, her or his travel expenses to and from the job here? Is that on our budget or not?
The interim? So the question is, who's paying for the travel expenses for the interim minister? The interim minister is a local position. So this person would relocate to Prescott, that they are used to doing that because they're trained as interim ministers. And Rick is going to talk about where we are in that process. But from a budget standpoint, we know what the average relocation expenses are from the UUA, and we will account for that in the budget. So yes, that's covered. There's not travel back and forth, and in the interview process, by the way, it's all on Zoom, so there's no travel here in the interview process. Norma and Art. Go ahead, Art, since you got the mic in your hand.
So during the last minister's search, we used as a selling point for our congregation to attract ministers the fact that we had a paid social justice coordinator. I did Oppo research on all the other congregations looking for a minister, from tiny little congregations all the way up to huge congregations. I could not find a single congregation in search besides us that had a paid social justice coordinator position. So that's just a data point for you guys.
Good to know. Thank you. Norma, question you had.
And that was my gist also. I know that it's a big deal to be losing the minister and possibly the music person, and I know that the board had very short notice on this, but I'm very concerned about the social justice part of this. In my thinking, I'm hoping that you guys are looking for someone now for social justice, because Patty has a wealth of knowledge in social justice here in Prescott. And a new person coming in really, really could benefit greatly by spending some time with Patty. So I'm hoping that you're looking for someone now so that we can get someone soon and we don't wait until August to start looking. And the other thing I would just like, the other comment I'd like to make is, I'm on the Finance Committee. This has been a very rough year for us on the Finance Committee because of this change from Power Church to the new accounting system. It's been a very difficult year. Russ was doing the treasurer's job for half of the year, and then Tracy came in, and we're grateful for both of them. But it's been a difficult year. So I just want to thank Tracy and Russ for doing such a good job, because it's not been easy.
Thank you, Norma. And speaking of Russ, those of you who don't know, Russ is hiding right now. Russ decided to take on the fabulous role of leading the Personnel Committee after being treasurer. So I would say the looking for the social justice coordinator can fall in Russ's capable hands. No, it is something, as I said, that's already on the radar. And given how, I have to say, I mean, how many people have been involved in such a short time since this announcement, and already looking at all of these aspects, I feel confident that we can get on that pretty quickly. So, Fred, who's got the mic?
I have the mic.
Lila. Oh, Lila first. Sorry, Lila.
Where are the expenses for the Fair Trade store?
The expenses of Fair Trade are down in under expenses in our community section. So let's look. That is community ministry, which is 6,100, that section, which is on the very last page. And you'll see a lot of areas here that were not previously budgeted or were budgeted very low. And as Patty likes to say, in some ways, this is the area that should be getting more support. New membership, hospitality, all of these sections. Fair trade supplies are right there. They were not budgeted in the past, Lila. We never had a budget for fair trade. So what we put in here were extrapolating out the expense based on what we had spent at the time, which was December, and then what we would anticipate the second half of the year to be, and that's how we got the $1,800.
And that's why they don't match.
And that's
why the
why
numbers
they
don't
don't
match.
match. The other thing that I will say that's quite wonderful, even though I think people know, Lila wants to make sure that the fair trade is not a profit center. She prices the items in the fair trade store for exactly what we buy them for. So actually, if you're looking in the income, it's a little higher, which is a little off, I think. But also, some people donate into, I can say like myself, I was a little hungry on Friday with the project team meeting, and so I bought one of those $2 chocolates, and I just put $5 in because that's what I had. So I think people do that, and so we're a little ahead in income, but it's not because you're paying more for those products, which I'm sure Lila would want you to know. All right, now Fred.
Okay, we're paying something like a little over $17,000 for the music director, and my perception is that's because we have a twofer with the minister and the music director making over 90 almost $100,000 in that twofer. Now that's for the couple. We probably won't get an individual to work as music director for that $17,000.
Yeah, so I guess first to clarify, it's definitely not a twofer. I want to be careful about twofer because we don't combine in any way. We have music directors compensation budgeted and we have a minister's budgeted, and they are separate even though they may not be separate. The music director, as you can see in the comments here, The salary went up to $25 an hour from $23.82 an hour. And if it were a 12-month, the full year would be $19,500, but because the music director works 11 months, it's $17,875, which is actually higher than the UUA guidelines, but because this is a very experienced music director, the $25 an hour is actually higher. So I can say only from my outside experience with a music director, that person is quite experienced as well and would makes less than that. So I actually, as I said, I think we're okay on that. We certainly would look at it every time we hire a new person. I have a feeling, at this point, I'm thinking we have gone over our 20 minutes. And what I'd like to do, please remember, I offered 3 different sessions ahead of time, office hours. They were low subscribed. I appreciate the people that came to them, but it was under 5. So I see a lot more questions, and anytime I would be happy to have a one-on-one on the phone and go over it in more detail. But unless it's something probably related to voting for the budget, I might say we should turn it over to the vote.
I think,
Is that okay?
hearing no objections, I will move and ask for a second for approval of this budget, which has had tremendous amount of work, both by the Finance Committee, Tracy, and a fair amount by members of the board as well. I hear a question from and I'm instructed from Joe Sprague, the parliamentarian, that calling for the question is essentially a motion to approve. Is there a second? It has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I call for a vote to approve the budget as presented. We need a 51%. It is very clear that we have well over 51%. Thank you very much, Tracy. It's a 5-year term. It's a term for life. It's a term for life. Okay, we have completed the difficult business. I have a couple additional things on the agenda as more informative information. The state of the interim search. Patty delivered her intention to leave quite late in the process, and we were then left with what to do. The standard procedure with the UUA, and we've been in touch with them on multiple phone occasions and Zoom occasions and so forth, is that to search for an interim minister, basically it is the board's responsibility to take on the responsibility or appoint essentially a task force to put together an application. The application process is online. It is very complex, and we had a very short time frame to do it. And I have to congratulate the board and members of the board that participated in this to put together an application, which I will say, we got a message once this was put in. As I say, we had a very short deadline. This was from Christine Purcell, who represents the UUA Transition Office. She said, the profile was a pleasure to read. GPUUC sounds like a nice place to practice ministry. I can easily imagine a minister who would be happy and successful with you, which is how I hope to feel when reading a search profile. So I'm patting the back of those who worked to get that application in. Concerning the progress to date, There's a very specific calendar that's laid out, a very tight calendar, which essentially goes through May. We have a candidate which has indicated an interest. This is an extremely qualified interim who has done multiple interim ministries in addition to serving communities for longer periods of time in the past. And we have a Zoom session. She has indicated an interest. That does not mean there's any commitment either from us or her, because these people who are applying can actually ask to be considered up to 8 different places, right? So it is not easy to find somebody who is both qualified and interested to come. And that we can't say at this point whether we have a viable candidate, but certainly from her qualifications, we have contacted multiple references provided by this individual. Also talked to the UUA individual about this, and everything looks very positive in terms of her qualifications. We have a Zoom meeting scheduled tomorrow at 1:30 in the afternoon for a Zoom meeting with this candidate. And by the end of the week, next week, this week, the 13th, we have to say, yes, we're interested in this person or not. And I think at this point, it looks like we probably will be. And clarify me, the candidate then also, on the 15th, we make an offer. And so the time frame is quite short, and we could know very soon whether this attractive candidate would be a person that we could work with. If this person is not interested to come, or if for some reason we do not, we are not interested, there is a second round which occurs in the latter half of May, basically to go through the same process. So by the end of May, we will know one way or the other whether we have an interim. One thing that was said earlier in the meeting was an interim for 1 year. I know there's been disagreement among individuals in the congregation about we want somebody for 1 year, we want somebody for 2. The UUA now basically has a single contract that basically says it's 2 years, but the second year is renewable. So there's flexibility in terms of once. It's a 1 year with an option to renew. I guess that's the only kind of contract that UUA approved ministers are operating on. Let me just say one last thing. If we fail to get an interim minister, there is an option to look for, again through the UUA website, a contract minister. I will say that a lot of congregations are looking for interim ministers and contract ministers, and there are not that many more ministers that are actually looking for positions. So we're just in an uncertain time right now. I think I would just say that we need to feel confident we are a strong, viable congregation, and we will succeed, whether we, exactly what form we will be in September, we can't say, but we have a lot of confidence that we have a very good likelihood, I think, of hiring somebody who's very experienced and has excellent references. So, yes.
If a candidate decides to come, when would they start?
August 1st.
August 1st, thank you.
I would ask somebody in the board to correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is contract ministers, there's a great deal more flexibility in they can be hired for very short periods of time. they, yeah.
I can add to
Yeah.
that. Sorry. Only, just to clarify, a contract minister is not trained as an interim minister. So the biggest difference is that interim ministers choose to be interim ministers. They're trained as such. They're trained to help navigate the process, to help you get to a settled minister. And you cannot hire a interim minister to be your settled minister. Contract ministers are people who are willing to have a one-year contract with a congregation, almost like they try you out, you try them out. You have the option to renew at the end of every year, and if it's a good fit, you have the option to choose them as a settled minister. It changed somewhat in that it used to be contract was largely for congregations looking for part-time people, but now there actually are full-time contract ministers. The downside to consider is that they often are less experienced. They're not as experienced, not just in interim, but in ministry. They're not as experienced, so that's something we'd have to consider. I hope you could hear that. Okay.
All right. Moving on then to the last couple of things. Oh, is there one more question? Okay. Okay, excellent, excellent. I want to just emphasize that the handout had indicated that the presentation for renovation options and a vote, which the board is determined is going to happen, is actually June 2nd. June 2nd is the presentation. The 9th is the vote. And we are going to ask after the presentation on June 2nd that if you have comments that you want to submit in writing to the board or the project committee who's involved in this, they be done by Wednesday the 5th. So that you'll hear more about that. So that's just information for you. Finally, we have closing words from Patty Willis. And I don't know where the sign is. My beard is gone again. As we give thanks for the democratic process that we enacted today, let us pledge ourselves to treat each other with respect and kindness. May we see our connectedness with one another and all that is, from the trees that give us shade to the stars and moon that watch over our sleep. And now, if Fred would extinguish the chalice. Thank you all for a very successful meeting. Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you. You all noticed the parking lot improvement, I hope. And so thank you to the project team that's been doing all of that work. And I have been assured that it will be easier to walk on after a while.